everybody, and welcome to Bits of Board, where we're talking board games, miniatures, cards, and dice. My name's Michael, and today we're checking out the modern day classic, The Gallerist, a heavyweight worker placement game from the one and only Vital Lasada. Here, players will take on the role of gallerists, an all-encompassing role that has players managing their own gallery, as well as the artists whose work they display. The goal here is to become the richest at the table come end of game.
Over the course of the game, a player will take actions by moving the gallerist pawn into different locations on the board. These locations are the Artist's Colony, which allows players to either discover a new artist or buy a work of art. The Sales Office, which allows players to take contracts or fulfill contracts selling collected art. The Media Center, which allows players to hire new assistants or promote discovered artists. And finally, the International Market, which allows players to utilize their assistants, gaining reputation tokens or bidding on pieces of valuable international art awarded in-game. To set up, we begin by placing the main board in the center of the table. This one is split into 4 locations, 4 galleries, and an influence tracker players will use to track their influence. Locations will set up in a sec, but for now note that each gallery is associated with one of the 4 player colors available in the game. This in mind, players should set up so that their play area is nearest their own gallery. Give each player in their color a player board, 1 gallerist pawn, 1 influence marker, and 10 assistants, 2 placed in the office and 8 in unemployment. Players will also receive 10 money, 1 random curator card awarding money at endgame for art on exhibit, and 1 random art dealer card awarding money at endgame for art sold. Next, randomly determine the start player, giving them the start player marker. When the game begins, they will be first to play. Finally, give each player a player aid. With players now set up, let's set up the main board. We begin by setting up a few generic bits and pieces. We place each player's influence marker in the 10 space of the influence track. We'll place visitors into the visitors bag depending on the player count, and then we'll set up the box office with a number of coloured tickets, again based on player count. From here on out, we're setting up each of the worker placement locations. In the sales office, we place the shuffled contract cards deck face down in its space on the left. Then we draw 4 cards from the top, placing them in the spaces to its right. In the Artist's Colony, we randomly draw and place our artist tiles in spaces matching their colour and art form. All tiles are placed face down, with the exception of the first blue tile drawn, which is placed face up and has a fame marked by one of the white fame cubes. If an artist's tile is drawn and its space is already occupied, it's returned to the box unused this game. After all artist tiles have been placed, add to them the following: 2 signature tokens in the spaces below, 1 artist bonus tile in the space atop, and 1 collector on each red artist tile. Finally, separate the works of art into their art forms, shuffling each pile separately and adding them to their space on the board next to the artist. Take the top one from each pile and set aside for when we set up the International Market location. Finally, place a number of visitors from the bag on each pile equal to the number of tickets shown on the topmost work of art. In the media section, stack each promotional tile in its corresponding space. Then finally, in the International Market, randomly choose 12 reputation tiles, placing 1 on each of the spaces at the top of the International Market. Finally, shuffle the 4 works of art set aside earlier and place them on easels as per the player count, with any remaining works of art or easels returned to the game box. Alright, so they are our locations set up. Let's finalize everything so we can get into learning the game. All that's left to do now is to draw 4 random visitors from the bag, placing them in the lobby, and take 4 of the remaining reputation tiles and place them face up on each location on the game board. Players will now, in reverse player order, take turns placing their gallerist pawn on one of the locations. They will take the reputation tile at their location and store it in the 3rd work of art space on their board. And with that, we are now ready to play. To win a game of the Gallerist, a player needs to have more money than the other players at the table. Money is awarded for things like fulfilling contracts, utilising contract bonuses, promoting artists. There's plenty of ways. We even have an intermediate scoring session where money is awarded for guests in a player's gallery. But endgame scoring is where it all comes together, with money being awarded for just about everything. International market majorities, reputation tiles, art on exhibition, curator cards, art dealer cards, influence, everything. So money shouldn't necessarily be a player's main focus while playing. That in mind, let's get into the gameplay overview. The Gallerist takes place over a varying number of rounds. Play will contain a single intermediate scoring event roughly halfway through the game, occurring when the entirety of a single colour of tickets has been depleted. But then the game will continue on until 2 of the 3 following conditions are met. The box office is empty of tickets, 2 or more artists have reached celebrity status, or the bag is empty of visitors. Play will begin with the first player, continuing clockwise around the board. On their turn, players will take actions, 1 mandatory location action, and an optional executive action which may be taken before or after resolving the player's location action. A turn goes like this. A player moves their Gallerist to a location on the board. This must be a different location to where they started. As a player moves, they may choose to leave behind an assistant from their office or move one already placed at a location. The purpose here is to secure a kicked out action later in the game. Once a pawn is placed at a new location, they move any opponent's pieces present into the kicked out space nearby. The player chooses whether or not they take an executive action. The player resolves one of the 2 actions available at the location. And then the player, if they've not already, have the option again of taking their executive action. Now, the active player is done at this point, but the turn is not over. Any player in the current location's kicked out space will now have the opportunity to take a kicked out action. With all that in mind, we have 3 sets of actions to go over here: executive actions, location actions, and kicked out actions. Now, executive actions lead into one of the game's core mechanics, so we're going to start with them. Taking an executive action, we have 2 possible options. A player can either move 1 visitor by spending tickets, or they can use a bonus from a contract card. Movement of visitors is a concept you'll want to grasp from the get-go. Basically, one of a player's main goals will be moving visitors into their lobby and gallery so that they're able to utilize actions and gain bonuses over the course of the game. There are 3 types of visitors. The brown visitors are investors, helping players gain money. Pink visitors are VIPs, helping players gain influence. And white visitors are collectors, helping with a bit of both, but also assisting in promotion of artists. Money, as mentioned earlier, is the measure of victory come endgame, so it's fairly important. Influence too is important as it allows players to take additional actions when they're kicked out, gain money, or provide additional fame to artists they promote. Collectors too help with the artist's fame, but their presence in a gallery is limited to 1 more than the number of artworks that a player has sold. So while they're powerful, players aren't able to get a whole lot of them early in the game. Now, all visitors have their place, but the only way they can be of any assistance is if they're in your gallery area, that is either in the gallery or in some cases the lobby. That's where tickets come in. Tickets are used to move visitors from one location to another. We have the central plaza and the lobby locations of each gallery. Then we have the gallery itself. Tickets can be used to move visitors from either one of the first 2 locations, the plaza and any player's lobby. But the gallery, once visitors are there, tickets have no effect, and the visitor is under total control of the player whose gallery they are attending. As to how these visitors work specifically, we'll cover that as we go through our actions. First, the artist colony. If a player moves here, they may either discover an artist or buy and exhibit a work of art. Discovering an artist is the precursor to having that artist's work of arts available to be bought and exhibited by all players. But there are some very nice rewards for being the first to uncover such talent. To resolve the action, a player first chooses one of the undiscovered artists, gaining the bonus shown on its bonus tile, then discarded. The player takes the artist's signature token, placing it on the commission space of their player board. And finally, the artist's tile is flipped face up with a fame marker placed in the brown start space. Signature tokens represent an artist kind of owing you one. You did discover them after all. As such, a player will be able to cash this token in for one of their works of art for what could be a heavily discounted rate. Catch is, a player may only hold one signature as a commission at a time. Now for red artists, when discovered in addition to all the other stuff, the collector is removed from the tile and placed in the plaza. Fame acts as a sort of experience points for the artist. It can be increased through either promotion of the artist or purchasing their works of art. As fame goes up, each new star symbol it reaches increases the value of all of their works of art in play, noting this is the amount it is both bought and sold for. There are 7 levels of fame, from no stars to celebrity status, with the value of their art increasing at every level. Should an artist reach celebrity status, each of their works becomes a masterpiece. And this is important as players exhibiting a masterpiece then have the 4th slot in their gallery unlocked for use, so long as they keep the masterpiece unsold. From here on, no further works of art can be bought from the artist, except for any remaining commissions. And doesn't that lead nicely into the second action available at the artist's colony? Buy and exhibit a work of art. This action allows a player to buy a work of art and place it in their gallery. A player chooses a discovered artist with either an available signature token or a discovered artist for whom they have a signature token in their commission space. Noting here that artists may only have up to 2 unsold works of art in play at any time. If the purchase is not a commission, the player pays what the art is worth based on the artist's current fame. Otherwise, they pay the amount worth at their initial fame. Next, the artist's fame is increased by 1. Any visitors atop the artwork are moved to the plaza. The player gains the tickets represented on the artwork, places the artwork in the leftmost space of their gallery, and finally places the used artist's signature token along the value track corresponding with the artist's current fame. Now, throughout this action, a player may spend their influence to both get money to purchase the art and increase the fame of the artist. Now, over the course of the game, there are a number of opportunities for players to spend their influence this way, but I will give you the exact details of that after all the actions are explained. For now, we've resolved the purchase. All that's left is to set up the newly uncovered art by drawing visitors from the bag as per the number of tickets displayed. Now, artwork, unless it's a masterpiece, is always placed in the leftmost available spot, so it will come a time when a player gets to cover up the space containing the reputation token. When this happens, the tile is removed and placed in a reputation space on that player's player board. Here, a player will gain the bonus of the space covered, but not gain the effects of the tile. Reputation tiles are scored at the end of game, but we'll cover them later. For now, let's move to our next location, the sales office. If a player moves to the sales office, they may either sign a contract or sell a work of art. Signing a contract allows a player to take one of the available contracts and place it on their player board. Once a player has one, they unlock the ability to sell so long as the art sold matches that requested by the contract. Now, as far as resolving the action, before a player chooses their contract, they may draw 4 new cards to place atop those already present. This is usually a good idea if the existing selection is not quite what the player wants. Then, once the card is taken, the space is refilled if empty, and the contract is placed on one of the 3 available spaces on the player board, either in a vacant space, awarding the depicted bonus, or on a previously completed contract, returning any assistance back to the office if present. And now we have our contracts, we can look at the second action available at this location, sell a work of art. If a player has a contract depicting a work of art they currently have in their gallery, they can sell it. They return the artist's signature to the main board and return a visitor from their gallery to the plaza if possible. They then take money equal to the value of the artist's work, removing the work sold, placing it next to their player board. If this were to create a gap in the collection, artworks to the right would slide down. Next, the matching contract is flipped and placed face down in an orientation matching the colour of the visitor removed. If no visitor was removed, the player may choose an orientation. The chosen orientation will dictate what bonus is available as part of the contract bonus action, which we'll cover shortly. For now, we move to the next set of actions at the media centre. Here, a player may either hire assistants or promote artists. Assistants are required for taking contract bonuses, covering locations to force kicked out actions, and utilising the international market. When taking a hire assistance action, players may pay for up to 4 assistants to move them from unemployment to any available desks remaining in their office. They pay the cost for each assistant in coins as depicted and gain any bonuses listed as well. In this action, a player is also able to use their influence to gain money. Now, used assistants are often sent home by one effect or another, whether this is a player creating kicked out actions or a player covering a contract on which an assistant is present. When this occurs, the assistant is returned to the player's office if space is available. If not, they are returned to the box and removed from play. The other option available at the media centre is promoting artists. This action allows players to increase the level of media promotion that a chosen artist has in order to gain bonuses and increase the value of the artist's work. The artist's current level is displayed here at the top right of their artist tile. To resolve a promotion action, the player must first spend a number of influence equal to the next level of the artist. They gain the bonus of the newly attained level, and then take the bonus tile, placing it on the artist tile. If one is already present, this is returned to the supply. Next, the artist's fame is increased by 1 plus 1 for every collector in the active player's gallery. Now, in this action, a player is also able to use their influence to grant additional fame, but again, we'll cover this a little later. The final location we're going to cover here is the international market. Here, players utilize their assistants to either take a reputation tile or make an offer for art of international renown. This is the art auction resolved at the end of game. Now, both these actions take place in the international market, a collection of cells made up of rows and columns with various levels of restrictions. Players will need to place an assistant in resolving, and depending on the column placement, will require a certain number of visitors in their gallery's lobby. Noting that this does not include the safe visitors actually inside the gallery, but actually the lobby. Whichever action chosen though, players will gain a certain number of influence based on the column placed before the action is resolved, and come endgame, gain an amount of money depending on the majority of each column. Row restrictions, however, are unique to each action, so let's check them out. First, taking a reputation tile. This one has a row restriction that a player must have already acquired a work of art in-game. And yes, it's okay if that work of art has already been sold. It also requires that a player has the space to store the reputation tile gained. Here, I'll note that a player can have up to a maximum of 3 reputation tiles stored on their player board. In which case, if they've already got 3 stored, they cannot take this action. The chosen tile is removed and replaced with one of the player's assistants. The tile is placed on the player's player board, immediately awarding the effects of the covered space. And again, ignore the bonus printed on the tile, as this is scored at endgame. When taking a make an offer for Art of International Renown action, players must spend money as per the row placed, but as an additional reward to the influence gained, also gain the bonus depicted on the chosen cell. At the end of the game, players will evaluate the money spent in making these offers, with the players spending the most having first pick, keeping one of the available international artworks set aside during setup. Player next in order would have second pick, continuing until all players present have taken an artwork. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our actions covered. Now, there are a few things that we've glossed over here that I would now like to flesh out just a bit. Spending influence is the main one. Over the course of the game, a player will have the option to spend influence to gain bonuses, whether activating kicked out actions, gaining money, or gaining additional fame for their artists. How much influence is spent is completely dependent on where a player's influence marker currently sits. When gaining money, a player is able to reduce their fame down to the previous money icon space, and for each money icon space they move to, they gain 1 money, which must be used immediately. Players can use this feature when buying a work of art, hiring assistants, or making an offer in the international market. The process is exactly the same for granting additional fame to artists. However, instead of the money icon being moved to, influence is dropped to the previous fame icons instead. Now, influence can also be spent to take kicked out actions, which is the third kind of action that I've been referencing a little bit. These occur after a player's turn, where another player's piece is moved into the kicked out space. Here, the displaced player may choose to either take an executive action or reduce their influence down to the previous fame icon to take one of the location's actions out of turn order. Very powerful, and might I add, one of the mechanics that keeps the Gallerist coming back to the table. Next, we'll have just a quick word on tickets and intermediate scoring. Tickets are taken by players over the course of the game, spent to move visitors. We know this. Once a single pile of tickets is exhausted, after the current player's turn, we have intermediate scoring. Here, players will gain money and influence based on the visitors currently in their gallery. Visitors award 2 influence per VIP, 2 money per investor, and 1 money and 1 influence per collector. Now, after intermediate scoring, should a player wish to draw a ticket that has already been exhausted, they must choose a ticket of another colour, but may exchange this ticket for another which has already been discarded and played. This ensures continued progression throughout the game, while still allowing players the freedom to make the moves they need. Finally, before we hit endgame scoring, we have contract card bonuses. These are bonuses that can be utilised through executive actions and are present on both the front and back sides of contract cards. To utilise a contract card bonus, a player must move one of their assistants from their office onto the space indicated on the contract card. Worth noting, of course, that these bonuses are all outlined on the player's player aid. So all that's left now is to go over endgame scoring. As a reminder, endgame scoring occurs once 2 of the 3 endgame conditions are met. That is, the box office is empty of all tickets, 2 or more artists have reached celebrity status, or the bag is empty of visitors. During endgame scoring, players are first awarded money for majorities in the international market columns based on the values shown at the bottom. The player with the most assistants in the first column receives 6 money, second most 3 money, and third most 1 money. If there's a tie, the tied positions are added together and distributed equally between the tied players, rounding down. The process is repeated for the second and third columns, with players awarded up to 10 and 15 money per majority. Next, reputation tiles are scored as detailed on the back of the rulebook. Money is then awarded for the sale price of each work of art currently being exhibited by each player. Then the auction for renowned works of art is completed. Curator cards are then scored and may include up to 4 exhibited works of art and an international work if one was received at auction, noting that a single artwork may be used in multiple lines of scoring. Art dealer cards are then scored, and then finally players gain money based on their position on the influence track. And that is it. The player with the most money wins, with tiebreakers most works of art exhibited and sold, most visitors in gallery, most assistants in play, and then if there's still a tie, it's a shared victory. And that's it. That is how you play the Gallerist.
Alright guys and gals, there we have it. Vital Losada's The Gallerist. I hope the video was useful in getting you a little more acquainted with the rules. It certainly is a very challenging game to fully understand. Just the way all the mechanics tie in together, the way that visitors are used to leverage bonuses and the actions themselves, it is all such a complex weave. And while it's tough, it is definitely worth it. All the elements work so well and they are ground so well into that theme. It is a rarity to be sure. This is a game about the art industry which actually focuses in on that industry as well as the economy, which is something I enjoy so much. But that is kinda what he does. Losada's games often give that unique thematic take, and his EGG games series especially is one that I would be very excited to show off for you all. So yeah, that said, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Help this thing continue growing. But aside from that, guys and gals, we are about done here. So, as always, my name's Michael. This is Bits of Board. We'll catch you next time.